actually going on. And this whole DAO1 Apertum situation, I don't know, it's kind of got that feel, you know?
Yeah, it definitely has some folks a little on edge.
And welcome to the show, by the way. I'm glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
Really glad to have your expertise today, especially for a topic like this one,
Yeah, happy to dive in.
because it does feel like it's kind of complex.
Yeah,
So like we do, let's just jump right into this.
let's do it.
So like we've been saying, there's all this buzz, and then the TSSB, the Texas State Securities Board, actually drops an official order.
Right, right.
And, you know, luckily we've got a couple of things that will hopefully help us understand everything a little better.
Yeah,
And first off, we've got this technical analysis from CryptoPearls, and they really got into the weeds.
they dove deep, yeah.
Yeah, and we've got the actual cease and desist order from
Yep.
the TSSB itself. So,
Right, the primary source.
yeah, I mean, I think that's what we always try to do here, right?
Definitely.
We really want to look past all the hype and speculation and look at the facts.
Get to the bottom of it, yeah.
Yeah, cut through the noise.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, the most important thing, at least for me, is what does all this mean for our listeners?
Exactly. What's the takeaway?
Yeah, like how can they use this information to make informed decisions?
Right.
So with that in mind, let's rewind a little bit,
Okay.
because it seems like this whole thing sort of started with an anonymous post online.
Hmm.
Just some random person making some pretty serious accusations about both DAO1 and Apertum.
Yeah, and these were not just like little complaints either.
No, this was like next level.
This was full-on attack mode.
Okay, so what were the specific allegations?
Well, the anonymous poster basically threw everything and the kitchen sink at them. CryptoPearls actually did a good initial breakdown of this post.
Okay.
And I'm looking at their summary now, and the poster accused DAO1 and Apertum of like everything.
Everything.
I mean, you name it, it was probably in there, right?
Okay.
Centralization, just straight up fraud, manipulation of the market.
Wow.
They even went so far as to call DAO and Apertum a honeypot,
A honeypot.
right? Like one of those schemes designed to track investors.
Oof. I mean, if any of that were even remotely true, that would be scary.
Yeah, you're telling me if even a fraction of that is true, it would be a huge problem.
Yeah, okay, so CryptoPearls didn't just like blindly accept those accusations at face value, did they?
No, and that's one of the things I really appreciate about their approach.
Okay.
Their first instinct was, okay, cool story, where's the evidence?
Yeah.
Crickets, nothing. The post was just completely empty, no technical details, no proof, just pure speculation and accusations.
Wow. Okay, so what kind of evidence, I mean, what would have lent some weight to those claims?
Well, first of all, some actual on-chain data would have been nice.
Yeah.
You know, like specific wallet addresses that were supposedly involved,
Makes sense.
or maybe some transaction hashes, anything concrete that could be verified on the blockchain.
Okay.
No, none of that.
Hmm.
Also, a deeper analysis of the smart contracts, how they work,
Right.
any audits that had been done, maybe some external expert opinions, something like that.
Okay, so this post was just words,
Pretty much. Yeah.
just like someone ranting online.
Yeah, it really felt more like a smear campaign, you know?
Well, yeah.
Just trying to trash DAO1 and Apertum's reputation.
And CryptoPearls even called out the language that the poster used.
Totally. It was super inflammatory.
Right.
Just words like scam and fake and centralized thrown around left and right.
And those are kind of trigger words.
Absolutely. They're designed to evoke an emotional response
Yeah.
to scare people.
Right, without actually providing any concrete evidence.
Exactly. And the lack of any references to, legitimate sources or experts made it even more suspicious.
So the bottom line was that initial post really didn't have much substance.
Right. No real meat on the bones, so to speak.
Okay, and then CryptoPearls didn't just leave it at that.
No, they rolled up their sleeves and decided to get their hands dirty.
They actually conducted their own investigation.
Yeah, their own independent, in-depth analysis of DAO1 and Apertum.
Wow. Okay, so tell me about that.
So they started by pulling all the data they could straight from the source.
Okay.
They got a complete CSV export from the DAO1 Explorer, no filtering, the whole thing.
So we're talking like raw data, huh?
The raw deal, yeah.
Okay.
And then they went to work crunching the numbers, building models.
Like serious data science stuff.
Oh, yeah, they used Python, Excel, you name it.
Wow.
And they looked at a ton of different factors, trying to get a complete picture.
Give me some examples. What kind of things did they look at?
So, like how validators were distributed?
Okay, so the people who are actually securing the network.
Right, exactly. And how governance really works on the blockchain. Like, is it truly decentralized or not?
Right.
And then they dug into the geographical distribution of mining operations. Where are the miners located?
Okay, I see. Just see if it's concentrated in one place or spread out.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then they analyzed how wallets holding APT, the Apertum token, are distributed.
Makes sense.
Like, are there big clusters of tokens held by a few individuals, which could indicate potential manipulation?
Right, right.
And then they delved into the burn mechanics, how tokens are destroyed to control supply,
Yeah.
and the overall transaction patterns, like what kinds of transactions are happening, how frequently, all that stuff.
Okay.
And then they examine the activity in the smart contracts themselves, which is like the heart of the system.
Wow, that's incredibly thorough.
Yeah, they really did their due diligence.
Okay, and the million-dollar question, what did all that data actually reveal?
Well, the headline is, they found absolutely no technical evidence to support any of those initial allegations.
None.
None whatsoever.
Wow. Okay, so no central control, no manipulation, no scammy stuff.
Nope. Based on their analysis, both DAO1 and Apertum are functioning as expected, like genuinely decentralized and active blockchains.
Man, that's a pretty huge difference from what that initial post was saying.
Yeah, night and day.
Did they go point by point, directly comparing those original accusations with their findings?
They did, and it's fascinating.
Okay.
They created this allegation versus fact matrix, and it really lays it all out.
Okay, give me some examples.
Well, take the claim that APT is centralized.
Right, we heard that one.
What did their analysis of the validator distribution show?
What?
Decentralization, plain and simple, provably decentralized.
Oh, wow.
And remember the honeypot accusation?
Yeah, the one that made me nervous.
Right, well, when they examined the on-chain data, guess what?
What?
No evidence of any mechanisms that would lock up funds or any central accumulation of tokens.
Okay, so no honeypot.
Not based on what they found.
Okay, that's a relief.
Yeah, so those are just two examples.
Okay, so what about all the other claims that were floating around?
Well, they tackled those head on, too. Like
Right.
the claim that token burns are manipulated.
Yeah, I remember seeing that one.
Yeah, well, the data clearly showed that the burns are completely transparent, automated, and you can check them on the blockchain yourself.
So not manipulated?
Nope. And then there was that one that said, admins are secretly controlling the network.
Right, like some shadowy figures behind the scenes.
Yeah, but CryptoPearls couldn't find any trace of special admin access or functions within the system.
So that one's debunked too.
Busted.
Okay, what else?
Well, there was the claim of a geographic concentration of mining.
Right, like maybe all the mining was happening in one country.
Yeah, but the data contradicted that too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it showed
Okay.
mining activity was happening in loads of different countries all over the world.
Okay, so the data basically shot down all those initial scary claims.
Completely demolished them.
Okay, and I remember there was another one that said DA1 was just a facade.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Well, to address that, CryptoPearls pointed to the very active governance processes that are happening within DAO1, real people using real voting mechanisms, and they documented a ton of actual community engagement.
Real people, real governance.
Exactly. And then there was that big sweeping accusation, APT is a scam.
Right, like the whole thing is a rug pull waiting to happen.
Yeah. But their analysis couldn't find any of the typical red flags or patterns you'd expect in a scam operation.
Okay, so it seems like CryptoPearls really did a thorough job of using data to debunk those initial allegations.
Yeah, they really went above and beyond to get to the truth.
Now, I want to talk about this document from the Texas State Securities Board, the TSSB, because that seems to have added a whole new layer of confusion to this situation.
Yeah, the TSSB document definitely threw a wrench into the works.
So what happened there?
Well, before the official TSSB order came out, a fake one started circulating online.
A fake one.
Yeah, like someone created a forged document and tried to pass it off as real.
Wow. People really will go to great lengths.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And the wild thing is, CryptoPearls was among the first to identify it as a fake.
Really? How did they spot it so quickly?
Well, for one, there were inconsistencies in the formatting and layout.
Oh,
It just didn't look right for an official legal document.
I see.
Plus, when they tried to verify the sources the document cited, they came up empty.
So it was like a poorly done forgery.
Yeah, pretty much.
And this is important because then the real TSSB order came out.
Right, and it's crucial to understand the timeline here. The fake document was circulating first, creating confusion, and then the real order came out.
Okay, so let's talk about the authentic TSSB order.
Okay, let's break it down.
What are the facts? What do we know for sure about this document?
So the real deal is ENF 25 CDO 1889.
Okay, got
And
it.
it was issued on March 20, 2025 by Commissioner Travis J. Iles of the TSSB.
Okay.
And one of the first things CryptoPearls did was to verify its authenticity.
Okay, how did they do that?
Well, they checked the official TSSB website, and the order's right there, publicly available. So
Okay.
anyone can go and see it for themselves.
Good to know.
Yeah, and the order specifically names a bunch of people, and we should probably mention them here.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so it names Joseph Haidt, Dirk Zalman, Bruce Innes Wild Hughes,
Okay.
and Dennis Christopher Luce, and also the Apertum Foundation.
So these are the folks that the TSSB is going after.
Correct. These are the named parties.
Okay, now what's the TSSB actually accusing them of?
Well, the main accusations revolve around unregistered securities offerings,
Okay.
and the order specifically mentions a few past ventures like GS Partners, G999, Lydian World, and Apertum.
So those are like previous projects that these individuals were involved with.
Right, and the TSSB is saying these offerings were not properly registered.
Okay.
And they're also accusing them of unlawfully promising investors crazy high returns.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah, and using platforms that weren't licensed to target investors specifically in Texas.
Okay, so we need to be super clear about what kind of legal action this is, because I know there's been a lot of misunderstanding about that.
You're absolutely right. It's crucial to understand the nature of this order.
So what is it?
It's officially an emergency cease and desist order,
Okay.
and it falls under a specific section of the Texas Securities Act.
Okay.
And this is the most important part, it's an administrative action, not a criminal proceeding.
Oh, okay, so it's not like they've been found guilty of a crime.
Nope, no conviction, and it's not some global enforcement action.
Right.
This is specifically within Texas.
Okay, that's a really important distinction.
It is, because a lot of people have been jumping to conclusions.
Yeah, and we don't want to do that here.
Absolutely not. We got to stick to the facts.
Okay, so bringing this all back to our main focus here, what does this TSSB order mean for European partners and for DAO1 itself?
Right. That's the big question everyone's asking.
Yeah, and CryptoPearls has done a lot of analysis on this, right?
They have, and their conclusions are pretty interesting.
Okay, tell me more.
So first off, and this is a big one, DAO1 is not listed as a defendant in the TSSB order.
Not at all.
Not at all. It's not named as a party being directly targeted.
Wow. Okay, but it is mentioned in the order, right?
It is, but only in connection with, like, some old domain names and marketing stuff that linked it to some of those past projects.
Oh, so because of those historical links.
Yeah, it seems more like they're mentioning it for context.
Okay, so to be super clear, is DAO1 actually being accused of anything specific in this order?
No, not directly, and CryptoPearls really emphasizes this point.
Okay.
There's no active investigation into DO1 mentioned in the order, and they haven't been assigned any liability either.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, at least for now.
Okay.
And what about Dennis Luce, since he is named in the order?
Yeah, what's his connection to DAO1?
Well, he has been active in the community, mostly on the marketing and investor relations side.
Okay.
But, and this is crucial, he is not a token issuer or a project lead.
Okay, so he's not like calling the shots.
Right, he's more of a community participant.
Got it.
And this all ties back to how DAO1 is structured.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
Because its decentralized nature is super important in this whole situation.
Okay, remind me, what does decentralized actually mean in this context?
Well, DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization, which means it's designed to operate without any central authority. Or, like, there's no CEO, no board of directors calling the shots.
Right, no one person in charge.
Exactly. All the decisions are made through a transparent governance process driven by the token holders.
Okay, so the community votes on things.
Right, using on-chain voting mechanism.
Okay.
And the whole project is open source, which means anyone can look at the code, audit it, make sure it's doing what it's supposed to.
Okay, so there's no hidden stuff. Everything's out in the open.
Exactly. And this is fundamentally different from those centralized ventures mentioned in the TSSB order.
Okay, can you expand on that a bit more? What's the difference?
Well, from what the TSSB alleges, those other ventures seem to have been much more centralized in terms of control.
Yeah.
You know, a small group of people making decisions about investments and promising returns.
Right.
DAO1's model is completely different. It's all about community governance and open, transparent operations on the blockchain.
So no shadowy figures pulling strings.
Nope, it's all out in the open.
Okay, and how does all this affect European investors who might be involved in DAO1?
Well, according to CryptoPearls, the impact seems to be pretty limited.
Okay.
Remember, the TSSB order is specific to Texas.
Right, right.
And since DAO1 isn't a defendant, and obviously European investors aren't named either, there aren't any direct legal consequences for them under EU law.
Okay, so they're not in any legal trouble because of this Texas order.
Nope. And it doesn't create any reporting obligations for DAO1 holders in Europe either.
Okay, it's good to clarify.
Definitely. It should ease some minds.
So after looking at all this, the initial accusations, the data analysis, the TSSB order, what's CryptoPearl's advice to the DAO1 community?
Well, they're recommending a balanced and informed approach, which I think is smart.
Okay.
They say, first of all, stay calm, but stay informed. Keep up with any new developments, but make sure you're getting information from reliable sources.
Right, don't just believe everything you see online.
Exactly. And they encourage everyone to really evaluate DAO1 on its merits, look at the tech, look at the transparency of its operations, and see how active and engaged the community is.
Okay, so look beyond the hype.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to ask questions, engage in discussions.
Yeah.
A decentralized project thrives on open communication.
And maybe, most importantly, be wary of misinformation.
Yeah, especially from anonymous sources or people who have a clear agenda.
Okay, so think critically, do your own research.
Probably don't just spread rumors.
Got it. And I know CryptoPearls has provided a lot of supporting evidence along with their analysis.
They have. They're all about transparency.
Okay, so what kind of extra info is available if people want to dig deeper?
Well, first off, they've provided links to the actual TSSB order so you can read it yourself.
Yeah.
And they've also got a link to their full decentralization analysis of DAO1 so you can see all the data, how they did their analysis, all that good stuff.
Cool.
And for people who want to stay connected with the community, they've shared a link to the official DAO1 Telegram channel.
Okay, so plenty of resources for people to explore.
Yeah, if you want to go down the rabbit hole, they've got you covered.
And it's worth noting the steps CryptoPearls took to make sure the TSSB order was actually real and to debunk that fake one.
Oh, yeah, they did their homework.
Okay, remind us how they did that.
So for the real order, they checked it against the official TSSB website, looked at the digital certificate, the timestamp, all that.
Okay.
And they even used archive.org to confirm some domain references, just to be extra sure.
Wow, okay, very thorough.
And for the fake one, well, besides the formatting issues, they used AI tools to analyze it.
Oh, cool. So like technology fighting against misinformation.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so bringing this all together, what's CryptoPearl's final assessment?
Well, their main conclusion is that DAO1, in terms of its technology and how it's structured, is a totally separate thing from those centralized projects targeted in the TSSB order.
Okay.
And based on all their analysis, they don't see any immediate technical or legal red flags for European investors.
Specifically European investors.
Yeah, but they do emphasize that this assessment relies on DAO1 sticking to its core principles, decentralization, transparency, community governance.
Okay, so as long as DAO1 keeps doing what it's doing, they think things are looking okay.
Yeah, that's their take.
Now, the report also has an appendix with some more details. What are some of the highlights from that?
Okay, so the appendix gets into a few interesting areas.
Okay.
First, it breaks down all the inconsistencies they found in that forged TSSB letter.
Okay, so if you really want to see how fake it was.
Yeah, if you're into that kind of thing. And then it summarizes the entire on-chain audit CryptoPearls did on DAO1.
Okay, remind me what that involved.
Well, they looked at the smart contracts in detail, the flow of funds between wallets, they validated the governance processes, and looked at the level of network participation.
Oh, wow. So like who's mining, who's providing liquidity, all that.
Yeah, all that good stuff.
Okay, and the report also includes some specific data about DAO1 and APT, right?
It does. It's got a whole Apertum decentralization report in there.
Okay, what are some of the interesting stats?
Okay, so they mention a Gini coefficient of 0.41, which suggests a pretty good distribution of the APT token, not too concentrated.
Okay.
And they found a lot of unique mining addresses, 947 to be exact, spread out over 42 countries.
Wow, okay, so pretty geographically diverse.
Yeah, definitely. And the report highlights that the governance in DAO1 is completely automated through smart contracts.
Okay, so no manual intervention.
And the burn and halving mechanisms are transparent and predictable, which is good.
Right, no funny business.
Nope. And then it shares some community stats from March 2025. Over 31,000 DAO1 accounts, over 21,500 verified TADs, and almost 10,000 active miners, which is about half the total accounts.
Wow, okay, so the community seems to be pretty active.
Yeah, definitely engaged.
And finally, I remember CryptoPearls included a legal reminder in the report.
Right. Important to keep that in mind.
Yeah, what was the main takeaway from that?
Basically, they wanted to emphasize that the TSSB order is an administrative action, not a final judgment or a criminal conviction.
Okay, so it's not the end of the story.
Yeah, and it's crucial to remember that any talk about future charges or whatever is just speculation.
Right, nothing's been decided yet.
Exactly.
Okay, so to wrap up our deep dive today, there's definitely a lot to unpack here. We've got this official TSSB order. Some individuals connected to DAO1 are mentioned in it, but the on-chain analysis by CryptoPearls suggests DAO1 itself is still pretty decentralized and isn't directly targeted.
Yeah, that's a good summary.
This whole thing really shows how important it is to, like, rely on verified information and really think critically about everything you see in the crypto space.
Absolutely, especially with all the noise and misinformation out there.
Yeah, it's so easy to get caught up in the hype or the fear.
Totally. Gotta stay grounded.
And it leaves us with a question for you, our listeners. As you navigate this, you know, increasingly complex world of blockchain,
Right.
what are the things you're looking for to determine if a project is legit or not?
Yeah, what are your red flags and green flags?
What gives you confidence?
What are your deal breakers?
And how can we all get better at separating, real data-backed information from all the BS out there?
Big question.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to help us all make smart decisions in this space.
Couldn't agree more.
So, yeah, food for thought as you continue your own journey in this fascinating and often confusing world of blockchain.
Thanks for the deep dive. This was super helpful.
Yeah, glad we could do it. And thanks for joining us today.
Anytime.
All right, catch you next time.
See you.